Hello, everyone. I'm Nicole Drummer. On behalf of all of us from Winebow Imports, welcome to the Women in Wine Leadership Symposium 10th Anniversary event. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that through the discussions, we can raise awareness and question the status quo for a meaningful and empowering experience that inspires us all to work together towards positive change for everyone. In case you didn't download our symposium booklet from your Zoom reminders, you can also find it on our site, womenwineleaders.com/booklet. At any time during today's discussions, please feel free to submit your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll save some time to answer questions at the end of each session. Before we start our keynote conversation, and in the spirit of supporting education and career advancement, Michelle DeFeo, president of Champagne Laurent Perrier US, has a brief message.
Thanks, Nicole. The success and longevity of the House of Champagne Laurent Perrier owes a great deal to the efforts of the many strong women who have been part of our house since it was established in 1812. Our history of remarkable women begins with our namesake, Mathilde Emilie Laurent Perrier, who inherited the house in 1887 when her husband, our owner and chef de cave, died in an accident in our cellars. She ran the house and it flourished under her leadership, and she then left it to her daughter. Her daughter sold the house in 1939 to yet another woman, Marie-Louise Lanson de Nonancourt, and it's still the de Nonancourt family today who runs Laurent Perrier, specifically her granddaughters, Alexandra and Stephanie de Nonancourt. Lucie de Nonancourt, the great-granddaughter of Marie-Louise, just joined our house a few years ago, continuing the generations of strong female leadership at Laurent Perrier. But the strong women leaders do extend beyond just the family and the owners of Laurent Perrier. I'm proud to say that I was the first woman to ever run a subsidiary for the House of Laurent Perrier, and I'm happy to say that I am now not the only woman to do so. Here at LPUS, we have a team that's comprised of over 2/3 women, and 2 of those women have just been elevated to positions of executive leadership within LPUS. Naomi Smith has been promoted to the Vice President of Sales, and Kathleen Poyser has been promoted to the Vice President of Marketing and Operations. So we believe very strongly in women in leadership positions at LP, and we try to take every opportunity that we can to turn that belief into action. We do that sometimes through mentorship and scholarship programs, including a scholarship program called the Champagne Laurent Perrier Women in Wine Leadership Scholarship, which we present in conjunction with Winebow during their symposium each year. I am very pleased to announce the winners of this year's scholarship program. Jelena Prodan, sommelier and beverage director at SKY Restaurant and Apollonia Restaurant in Chicago. Monica Townsend, certified sommelier at Lazy Bear in San Francisco. And Casey Rogers, advanced sommelier and part of the Great Wine Program at the Breakers in Palm Beach. Congratulations to all of you. We look forward to you all continuing your wine education and making us proud as more women leaders in our industry. Thank you so much to Winebow for continuing to have this important symposium year after year. And I raise a glass to you and to all of the wonderful women that will be speaking today, and to all of the wonderful women in attendance, and of course, to our scholarship winners. Cheers to you all.
Congratulations, Jelena, Monica, and Casey, and thank you, Michelle and Laurent Perrier, for your generosity and commitment. It's a great honor to now introduce the moderator of today's keynote conversation, journalist Wanda Mann. Wanda is the East Coast editor of the SOMM Journal and also the New York editor for Tasting Panel. A native New Yorker with Southern roots, she's been writing about wine since 2008, providing educational content to readers through her platform, Wine with Wanda. Many of you know her for her incredibly engaging Instagram Live interviews with winemakers and other industry professionals. If you don't already, be sure to follow her on Instagram at WineDineWanda. Wanda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nicole, for the lovely introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Hola, bonjour, whatever language, welcome. You know, we can't be together in person, but it just goes to show that wine still has the power to bring people together. And here we are in cyberspace, sharing some wine and conversation. So I'm going to introduce our wonderful panelists. Our first panelists will be Annette Alvarez-Peters, founder of Annette AP Wine and Spirits Incorporated. Annette's many accolades include being recognized several times as one of the most influential individuals in the wine industry. In 2020, she retired after 37 years at Costco, 25 of those years at the helm of their $2 billion Wine, Beer, and Spirits Division, one of the largest wine retail operations in the world. Annette now works as a consultant with wineries and supports the next generation of wine leaders as a mentor with Wine Unify and the Batonage Forum. Thank you so much, Annette, for being here. Our next panelist will be Jireh, wine consultant, educator, and advocate. Jirka makes it a point to challenge the status quo, and we're glad she does. In 2020, Jirka organized The Price of Admission, a workshop on bias and sexual assault in the wine world. And later in the year, she co-founded Industry Sessions, a digital wine education program exclusively for marginalized people that spans 14 cities in the US and Canada. Jirka consults on a variety of groundbreaking projects geared at reclaiming wine spaces for all people. Thank you, Jirka, for being here. And last but not least, the wonderful Mandy Oser, owner and wine director of Ardesia Wine Bar. Mandy opened Ardesia in New York City in 2009, and she guided Ardesia through the pandemic, closing only for a total of 48 hours before pivoting to create new lines of business, which sustained Ardesia and many of its employees until restrictions were eased. At Ardesia, Mandy fosters an inclusive environment and aims to provide her employees with the true work-life balance and support. Prior to opening Ardesia, Mandy worked alongside chef Eric Rapere and co-owner Maggie Lacose at Le Bernardin Restaurant. Hello, Mandy. Okay, so I'm so excited to get this conversation started. Annette, the first question is for you. And you know, everyone's path to wine looks different. Our paths don't look and shouldn't be the same. And that's what adds so much richness and texture to this industry. So your 37-year career at Costco had an unusual start. Before wine, you worked for the company in audio merchandise. Can you share what aspects of that job you found transferable to wine?
Sure, and thank you also for having me, and thank you, Wanda, for moderating. Sure, I was a homegrown Costco employee. I started at a very entry level, and I worked my way up. Costco is a very unique company in that it's all about the culture and learning the basic disciplines of merchandising. And so those basics, you know, are the 6 rights of merchandising, driving your sales, controlling your inventory and your margins. So you apply that to whatever department you're in. So I had all of that. And what I just needed to do was learn about wine and the beverage alcohol department.
Wonderful. Now, you've also shared that you didn't attend college. You knew relatively little about wine when you first started, but clearly it didn't hold you back. So how did you prepare yourself as a wine professional? Was there any advice you received from your CEO at Costco to help you along the way?
Yeah, so, you know, it was quite intimidating and probably really overwhelming when I first started. And, you know, and I would suspect that happens with anything new. But I would attend as many supplier seminars that they had, any tastings that anybody had. I was told to always taste with someone better than you. Mm-hmm. And that way you're always learning. I also read all of the publications because back then there was no Google. And I asked questions of everybody, whether they were wholesalers, importers, suppliers, my friends that collected wines. So it was always about why. And then after a few years, I felt I really needed to step up my game and really learn about wine. So I enrolled into the WSET program and I got my diploma. And at the same time, I had enrolled into Society of Wine and I achieved my CWE. So that's how I got into wine and started learning about it. And as for advice from the CEO, he always had said, you know, always do the right thing and try to be smarter than the person across from you.
Good advice. You can't go wrong with that. Now, I know, Mandy, you thought your formal education would take you in a very different direction. You thought it would be politics and law, but you said that really didn't light your fire. So what was it that you found in wine and hospitality that did just grabbed you and now you've made this your career?
You know, I think that's true, and no disrespect to all the wonderful lawyers out there, but I think for me, it was something about the pace of that kind of work that didn't connect with how I like to work and the kind of the environment that I wanted to be in. But I think food, wine, the sort of culture of restaurants, actually, when I look back, really was a through line since I was very young. I was always interested in food. I think, you know, when I was maybe 7 years old, I requested or demanded to have a birthday party at a kind of a cool local restaurant. So it was there, but I sort of never thought that it would be my prime focus. And then at the point at which in my 20s, when I felt I wasn't going to go to law school, I kind of took a hard stop and really looked at what made me happy and started to really explore what could be possible in this world. And I think that's a really key lesson is there's sometimes there are whole worlds, there are whole jobs that we don't even know exist until we start kind of peeling back the layers and talking to people and doing research. And that is how I ended up here, because I put the word out that I was seeking and I was looking, you know, at my calling is a bit of a strong word, but I did put that out to many people in my life. And one of my dear friends happened to work for City Harvest, a local food rescue organization that my former boss was very active on the board of. And she heard that he was looking for someone to join his office. And I kind of took a chance just on jumping into that. Really was definitely not something I ever envisioned or was part of some grand plan. But once I landed there, I realized it was the right fit almost immediately. It was just something about being surrounded by food, wine, hospitality, and all the language that goes with that. You know, the work isn't that different, I think, sometimes, maybe unless you're like a brain surgeon, but the day-to-day, I really just felt at home, and then it grew from there. And my passion for wine developed, which led to opening Ardesia, which 13 years later, here we are.
Here we are, you know, and I think Jirka's experience will also speak to kind of seizing opportunity and, you know, making your seat at the table. So Jirka, you grew up in a house with no alcohol. You moved to New York. You wanted to work in the hip hop world, and you had a side gig as a food runner, and that kind of snowballed into this career that you have now. So can you please share your experience, how you took from, you know, how do you make that transition?
You know, when I think about hip hop, I think about creativity and rawness and real stories. And I feel like I carried that into wine. I had an amazing wine director, Jared Roth, who made everyone in the restaurant taste and understand and speak about wine. It didn't matter if you were a runner or a busser, or if you were the captain or the sommelier. And that really is where wine kind of grabbed hold of me. But then later on, I start working with Zwan Grays at Olmsted, who is also a musical person, and who taught me that it's not just the experience you're having on your tongue with the wine, it's how your whole body feels. And that to me was music. And I ran with that. And I ran with speaking truths and having raw conversations and bringing people into rooms and building what I think the new wine world should look like. And so far, it's been successful because I'm in this room of powerful women speaking to all of you today. We did industry sessions, which brought in a platform for BIPOC to come together and really work on their skills to be empowered to speak about wine. We did the conversation around sexual assault, which even built a stronger network of people who wanted to have real tough conversations to make this a better world. And we're not stopping. There's so much down the pipeline and so much that we're working on in agriculture, in marketing, in hospitality, so many beautiful organizations that have come together. I'm just excited to see what the future holds for wine.
That's wonderful. So, you know, we're definitely seeing younger generations taking different paths to careers in this industry. So, you know, Jirka and Mandy, you know, what can you share that you've noticed in the last couple of years about how people are entering the wine industry? Because I know that many of your staff, Mandy, are kind of new to the industry, and you create an environment where you encourage that. And Jirka also is working with that population well.
Well, I think that's so important. And I think supporting people who want to get into wine, even if they haven't come up the traditional paths, I think this panel and all of us are really good examples of that there's not one way in. And, you know, you have to do the work. Annette talked about taking every class, reading every book. You can't just, you know, achieve without putting in the work. But I think something specific we do at Ardesia is when we look at resumes, we try to go on the passion and the personality versus, oh, do they have New York experience? I think we almost try to find people who don't have those traditional credentials, and then we try to create an environment where people can learn here and that we can give them the tools. So I think that's one thing I think we're going to see more and more of. Maybe people feeling like they can enter this industry as long as they're in environments that are supportive and give them the tools and the necessary learnings to get to the next level.
You know, and I feel, Jirka, you know, that the younger generation has felt a lot more empowered to speak out on some of these tougher issues that we are tackling now. So what are some of those issues that you've seen and that you've wanted to confront in the wine industry that your generation has said, you know what, I want to be in this industry, but the way it is now isn't quite working for us?
Absolutely. I think that the younger generation sees that the table that was set before them was not inclusive. They see that there's a lot of gatekeeping that's going on, or that was going on, and there's just no time for it. There's so many ways to get this education. I mean, you can go on TikTok and learn anything. You can go, like, we're always going to be students of wine. You can go on YouTube. You can do your own research. If WSET works for you, that's great. If CMX works for you, that's great. But a lot of these young people know that they don't have to do the traditional route. They saw their older brothers and sisters, you know, get degrees and masters and still can't find jobs. Whereas now you can actually be like, hey, can I come intern for you? Can I come check out the winery? Can I do this agricultural project with you? Because now there's opportunity. Now they can be like, oh, there's a scholarship here for me to study XYZ. I'll do that. Like, it doesn't have to be so linear. It's not just one way. You can do several different things. And I think young people are now finding that they can build a hustle out of all the things they're interested, instead of just being like, this is my sole career and this is the only thing I want to do. I think that is a relic of the past as we move into the future. And we all have to kind of get with the times and let people grow how they want to grow, you know?
True. So Annette, you know, being at Costco for 25 years, I'm sure, you know, you saw a lot of these changes coming in. Did you notice some differences in how work approaches by generations, and what can we learn from each other?
Yeah, sure. I think as the older generation, we have a responsibility to share our experiences and pass on maybe what worked for us and maybe what might work for them. We need to really make an effort to really try to understand their way of thinking and maybe possibly meet them in the middle if that's what's needed. I think there's things that maybe I might never understand. An example would be when I was in the corporate world, I went into my staff's cubicle, and there was a group of 6 of them. And we were talking about business, and I noticed that 2 of them were texting each other. And mind you, they're 4 feet away. And I asked the question, are you 2 texting each other? And they started laughing and said, yeah. I said, well, you know, if you would just ask that question out loud, everyone in the cubicle would benefit from the question. And so they said, yeah, I understand that. So I think that's just something that my generation, it's really hard for us to wrap our head around when you're that far apart to ask a question. But I think there's a lot of learnings that from an older generation to the younger generation, I think there's a lot in between that we can actually help each other and achieve whatever we want to achieve.
Yeah, you know, it's so true. And when we talk about, you know, mentorship, we often look at it as always a younger person being mentored by an older person, but it can work both ways because, you know, when Jirka said we can learn so much from TikTok, and I'm like, oh, that's why I just go to watch silly dance videos. But you're right, just embracing these new platforms as well. I learned so much from my younger peers. So, you know, we know where we are now. You know, where are we going from here? Annette, you were the speaker at the very first Women in Wine Leadership Symposium 10 years ago. And how do you think the industry has changed since 2012? And what else still needs to be done?
Yeah, I think the biggest change that I've seen is that there's a lot more women in leadership roles, which is fabulous. And there's a lot more in middle management. There's a lot more conversations happening. There's a lot more support and groups for mentorship. I feel like there's still a lot of work that still needs to be done to see BIPOC in leadership roles. So I hope that will continue and we can figure out, you know, how to mentor some of these women that are maybe in middle management to get them into those leadership roles.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work with Wine Unify? You know, it's one of the, I guess, more visible organizations that's really active in creating these opportunities.
Yeah, so Wine Unify it's terrific. It's a platform that champions diversity and inclusion for those underrepresented minority groups, and they're offering wine education and mentorship. I've had the pleasure of having some really great mentees, and so whether I'm helping them, you know, sharing my life experiences with them dealing with maybe an older subordinate, or helping them with their resume, or you know, prepping and coaching them along for an interview. I'm also making connections and networking with them to try to introduce them to more wine professionals that might be able to help them along with their journey. So I had a lot of help coming up and through the industry. So I feel it's really important to pay it forward.
And, you know, Mandy, as a business owner, you know, you kind of model behavior, but are specific things that you do to kind of actively mentor your employees or set them up with mentors? How do you view mentoring?
I think mentoring is extremely important, and I love how we touched on the fact that it can go both directions. A mentor doesn't have to be just a traditional older senior person and a junior person, and I really love that idea is something I think that we've talked about as a panel, and something folks should keep in mind, especially those in leadership roles, that you have so much to learn from those that are working with you who may be more junior. And I think I'm a great example of that. Most of our staff at Ardesia is younger than me, and I'm just an open book and constantly learning from them. But in terms of cultivating their growth, you know, we do specific things like we provide tuition reimbursement if they want to do WSET or another formal educational avenue. I think another thing, we talk about gatekeeping, and we try to be the opposite of that. And if anyone wants to taste when we're tasting with reps, we try to be inclusive. And I think that's helping spark a lot of interest in wine for the staff. And so it's informal, for both formal and informal, but I think keeping it open. Again, I think Jirka touched on there not being doesn't have to necessarily be a linear path, and someone may come to us and be still pursuing their acting career, but also want to deepen their wine knowledge. And we just try to stay really open to that and figure out what we can continue to do to support that growth.
Wonderful. So Jirka, industry sessions, you know, you've created this wonderful avenue for wine education and an environment where people are comfortable. So tell us more about it for those who don't know industry sessions. What is it?
So industry sessions came about in 2020 after the death of George Floyd, sent this wave through the United States and in every industry to kind of check ourselves and see where we lie in the issues of race. And at that point, I knew that it was important for me to just say, if you want to be part of the change, this is what we can do. And that's how it was born. I asked my friend James Sly if we could join some of his education classes that he was doing online. And then I started asking my network of peers who had attended the sexual assault workshop that I had put together, because I knew those people were the people that wanted to see change in our industry. So once I connected with them, we found the wines in all these cities across the United States, and people from all over joined in on these calls. And when I tell you, when you see a room populated of people that look like you and love what you love, it makes your heart burst. And it makes you feel like you are valid and you are valued and you are meant to be here. And that just kept growing and snowballing. And it's been beautiful to see. Now we're in 2022, and I see some of these young people who came to the first industry sessions. They have their first sommelier gigs. They've done internships. Some of them have made their first wines. Some of them are managing wine shops. And it's incredible to see that growth. And it was really a call for love, and the industry responded back. And it's been incredible and uplifting. And I know that the change that I wish to see in this world will not happen in my lifetime, but I know that the collective of people that I surround myself with are chipping away at what the status quo is. And we're not stopping. Like, we want to see an industry that respects LGBTQ. You know, we want to see an industry that has Black and brown, yellow people as leaders, as decision makers. Like, I want to see an industry that doesn't have to gender everything. I want to see an industry where I can have a full, beautiful wine dinner, and every winemaker comes from a different background that shows me the American landscape. It's not just the same old white man. And not to knock on them, you make beautiful wines, but I want to see my people and my friends making wines at the same caliber and receiving the same respect. And I think that we're on our way.
That's wonderful. And, you know, a lot of this, what we've heard is you have to speak up, right? And also you have to seek people who will help you, allies along the way. So we talked about gatekeeping. And I think sometimes people aren't even aware that they're gatekeeping, because they haven't really looked around at the issue. So how do we let people empower? What is it that they can do to make a more inclusive environment beyond the wonderful programs that you do?
For us to move forward, we just have to, these are the ways that we came up. These are the systems that were taught to us. We can forgive ourselves for that, and we can move forward and say, I'm not going to hold this information back anymore. Like it was for me. I had to claw my way into finding this information. I'm not going to do that to the next generation. These are the steps I took to get to be an Annette. These are the steps I took to get to be a Mandy, a Wanda, and just lay out your maps. And people will, if you're hungry enough, you'll go through that map. Mm-hmm. You will detail and find and pick and research, and you will find the way to get to where you want to be. And we have to trust in the youth, and not just the youth, people who at any point in your career, if you want to switch into wine, we just have to trust in people that if you want this, you can have it, and you'll put the work in. I think gatekeeping, why it happens is because we think, I had to go through it, so you have to go through it now. And it's just over for that. It's over for that. Information is out there. The internet is insane. You can find, like I said, you can find anything out there. You can go to a library and find anything if you're adverse to computers. So yeah, I really think it takes us to just burn the gates down and be okay with being part of what the old was, but also being okay with taking up this mantle for what the new is.
So Annette, I know you're not at Costco anymore, but when we're talking about more of a corporate structure, did you see over time more intentionality within that structure to say, what, maybe there is more that we can do to be more diverse? I mean, what tips would you offer to businesses that are trying to figure out how to do this?
Yeah, I think, it all starts with awareness. You have to be aware of what's happening out there. And I think you need to be transparent in what you believe in. Mm-hmm. You need to get your companies involved. There's so many great programs out there right now that people are trying to support all all across the way, right? And so, but I think you really have to ask those questions, you know, first, am I asking the right questions? Have I connected with the right people? Have I connected with the right groups? Have I done enough? And I think, you know, Jirka has such great ideas on the path is going to look different for the younger generation. And so how do companies adapt? And maybe it's not 100%, but how do you meet them halfway? How do you get there and start chipping away? Like Jirka said, you just have to keep chipping away at it. And I think at the end, you really have to have humility because you don't know everything. And you have to be able to have that willingness to listen and to consider all the other ideas that are out there, because we grew up in a different generation with very structured ideas. So how do we change that a little bit to still be the company that you are, but also bring in this new generation?
I think we should also recognize, you know, that for many people who've had full careers, wine is their second career. It's not always younger people wanting to enter this. So that's why I think that idea of reverse mentorship, being flexible, you know, if you're someone who wants to enter wine after 20 years of doing something else, you know, you have that business background, but you need support from younger generations like Jirka, right? And you want support from someone who's been like Annette and Mandy. So, you know, it's so many different factors go, I think, into entering the wine world.
We all bring something to the table, and we should all have that mutual respect and have an openness to share with each other. Like, it makes us so much stronger.
So true. Now, I know Mandy, no, go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that also speaks to the importance of cultivating relationships. And, you know, it's especially with mentorship, it's not just a take, that it's a give and take. And I think, especially in this post-pandemic time, it's been really tough to stay connected to people. I think a lot of us feel that, but I think something we can all do is just take a beat and reconnect with someone. This is often how you get jobs. This is often how you solve problems. And it's just been so important to me. And I think it makes life, and work life so much richer. So I would definitely encourage everyone to try to do that as well.
Yeah. Jirka, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think to just piggyback off of what Mandy said, you know, you said the word connect. And I think the way that we change the world is by creating deep connection. So I just wanted to add that deep connection to people who don't look like us, deep connection to younger people, to people who are new to the industry at any age. It's all about having a real concept of connection.
It's so true. And I think you've hit on, you know, you can't view mentorship and networking as just transactional. It is about building a relationship. And often that may not pay off on what your immediate need is at that moment. But by building a relationship, I find opportunities come your way. I believe that's why we're all here today. You know, it's relationships that we've built over time in this industry. Now, I know, Mandy, you know, you have followed kind of a don't just say it, show it attitude when it comes to showing how the workplace can look. You're a working mom in a tough industry. And can you share some of the policies that you've created to make that possible? Because that's something that we hear often, that for moms or for anyone who's a parent in this industry, it can be very tough and not very flexible.
I couldn't agree more. And I think when we were speaking earlier about changes we want to see and things we want to see, I do think that maternity leave and policies towards working women in this industry is probably one of the highest things on the list that has to be tackled in order to support women continuing to grow. If women want to have families and continue to work, it's just not realistic for them to work, especially as new parents, and men included, 60, 70, 80 hours a week on their feet. So I by no means have the answer, but I think when we talk about modeling, I am the leader of the organization in which I work, and granted, most of the staff are younger and not having kids at the moment, though one of our kitchen staff had a little baby girl last year in the middle of the pandemic. So I try to simply model what I want to see, which was I was fortunate enough to be able to take a real leave. And then I eased back into the schedule. And I think it's important to note that in itself comes from a place of privilege of the position I have and the childcare assistance that I had that allowed me to do that smooth transition. But I think somehow that has to be the norm. There has to be a chunk of time that women have to mother their infant and take the time they need for their bodies to heal. And then, you know, one thing that's really tricky for women especially is breastfeeding and pumping. And for me, again, because I am in charge, I would leave the floor to pump when I needed to. And I was lucky to have enough staff to cover. But I did that. I specifically made it a point, I'm going to pump, I'm going to store my breast milk in the fridge. You know, I'm not going to hide this. And I think these are little things, but I do think that when people see that, then they understand the tone. And I think it's the beginning of figuring out what the solution is. And, you know, with my back of house gentleman who had a baby, of course, it was a bit unique because it was in the midst of the pandemic, but we did specifically say, you are staying home. We kept him on salary and we did not want him exposed with a newborn. And so again, that's kind of a unique moment that happened, but that was something really important to us, to have him have sort of equal access to the time to be with his child. So it's a start, I hope.
And Annette, I'm sure you would agree, you know, these aren't just things to do because we're humans and we should look out for each other. It's also smart business. When your employees feel that you have their back and their well-being in mind, you know, there's loyalty, they feel more attached. I mean, you were at Costco 37 years. So that speaks to maybe a corporate culture that had that type of environment.
Yeah, you know, and you do that, you have to respect everything that they do. It's about teaching. And I think a lot of times they just don't know. And so how do you figure out how to teach them the right way, to always do the right thing, to treat people well. So yeah, I think that in a corporate world, again, it's just, I think you have to be aware. And I think sometimes that's not there. And when it's not there, you know, it doesn't go the right way. So I think that, you know, yeah, it's a lot of give and take. Mm-hmm. And, you know, both sides, meet them in the middle, get all the generations coming together and really figure out a way how to move forward.
And also, you know, I think one of the things that's kind of the pandemic is that people have suddenly had more work-life balance. So Jirka, I'm wondering if you've seen with those participating in industry sessions, this is a topic that's come up that they really, in the beginning, I think there was this idea of paying your dues, but now it's like, no, time out. I want to work in a place that fits into the lifestyle overall that I want.
Absolutely. And you can talk to anyone that owns a hospitality business in New York City. If you can't give people the lifestyle that they want, they can leave, because there's plenty of other opportunities for them to find another position where they will be given the hours that they want and they will be given the benefits that they want. And I don't think that's going to change. The younger generation is definitely like, I know what I bring to the table and you can pay me for it, or I can go somewhere else. Because at this point, they've seen what life can be. And I think all of us should recognize that our mental health is so important. Like, we have to have time to take care of ourselves. We have to have time to just nurture ourselves and be around nourishing people and have a nourishing practice. This go, go, go mentality, you know, it is a detriment. And I think that all of us can agree to that. Like, when you are in the hustle and bustle, working 60 hours a week and in whatever capacity, it takes away from your day-to-day, like it takes away from your life. It shortens your life. It hurts your mental health. It affects how you deal with other people. It affects your relationships. And let's get down to the nitty-gritty. We work in alcohol, and a lot of people use alcohol to soothe because they are exhausted. And we see people that we love go down a rabbit hole that we are too scared to talk about and we find taboo when we work in an alcohol industry. That's another thing that has to change. Like, we have to make space for ourselves. And I am so thankful for this younger generation that's like, I'm taking time for me. I also see them being like, I'm gonna have a cup of tea now. Like, when we go out for like at Hughes Society events, I'll see the younger people being like, you know, we're not gonna drink anymore, we're gonna have tea. And I'm just like, my generation was like, let's go, let's open more bottles. But they're like, no, now it's just, we're drinking water. And I love to see that. I love to see that they are so steeped in consent culture that it's just their norm. They're so steeped in already having boundaries for themselves that it's their norm. And that's just another place where we can say, look at what we can learn from the future generations that are here. They're present. Let's not call them future. The younger generations.
So Jirka, is there an example you can give of maybe something at an industry event that could help foster
consent culture?
Yeah, consent culture.
Absolutely. I think, first of all, we all have to be bold enough to ask people for what we want. So if you see that there's an event happening, a tasting, maybe you're going to a wine dinner where it's hosted by some winemaker coming from Germany, you can ask the people that are putting the event together, hey, is there a little code of conduct? Can we do a little run through just so we have a baseline to work off? And that conduct can be, there will be a spit bucket on the table. You will ask if you can top off anyone's pours. You won't expect or peer pressure anyone to finish every drink you pour them. Just very small, simple things like that. Change the dynamic in the room, because now people know they're safe. People know who to go to if there's an issue, because you're setting a standard before anybody even walks in the door. Mm-hmm. And it's so simple. It's a paragraph, you know, it's something that can be posted at larger events. It's a very easy way to start a conversation as well.
And Annette, I know this is something you often did with your teams when you were traveling, you know, to visit wineries, you know, looking out for each other. Can you give some of those guidelines and tips that you had in place?
Yeah, and like I said before, I think that if you don't know, you don't know until somebody tells you. And so a lot of times I think it's just, again, that awareness. You have to know when you're working for a company that you're on, and you're on 24/7, and you want to be respectful to wherever you are, at any winery that you are at. But, you know, I was also taught that if you're at a wine dinner, and a lot of times, you know, if you're at a winery and they want to show you all their wines, maybe there's 10 glasses of wine in front of you during the meal, the course of the meal, leave something in the glass at all times. You don't need to finish it. There's no need to finish all 10 of them, and that's for sure. You have to be responsible. You have to act responsibly. When you're at tastings, there's a spit bucket for a reason. Use it. And, you know, have a buddy system. And a lot of times there are some really fabulous wines and you don't want to spit it out. Okay, fine. But it can't be all 100 of them. You have to use the spit bucket. And with that buddy system, you have to have someone that says, hey, you've had a little too much. I'm going to get you out of the room now. And so you should always pair yourself with someone. Someone might get out of line. That's going to happen. It's an industry thing, unfortunately, but we have to be responsible and watch out for each other.
And I know, Mandy, you know, dealing with customers, you've had to, one way of looking out for your employees is kind of revisiting this notion that the customer is always right, because sometimes they're not.
Well, I think again, going back to the pandemic, I think that flipped so many things on its head. And one of those things was we had to be a lot more strict, I guess, with the customers, or we really had to set the tone in terms of safety procedures. And I think that has kind of turned things on its head a little bit. But, you know, this is a great example of the terminology that is brand new to me, consent culture, and that I'm learning from people like Jirka and others who are putting this into the lexicon. And I'm so grateful because, you know, I think this is something that has needed to change. And I think from the perspective of a business owner, we we actually have a legal obligation not to overserve. And one really important thing, I think, is to make sure that, you know, it seems generous to top someone off. It seems hospitable, but we need to get the guest permission for that. And I think that is something that I've seen evolve and I'm really happy about. And then in terms of the things about the guests, it's making sure the staff knows they're in the driver's seat. If there's a guest behaving in a way that's inappropriate, or, you know, something that happens a lot in bars is someone comes in, we have no idea that they've already been drinking. They present normally, and then you pour them one drink and they're overserved. And so having our staff know that they are empowered to drop the check, ask the person to leave, get a manager involved, whatever needs to happen in order for them to feel safe and for that guest to not be, you know, continue to be overserved. So it's complicated. It's, you know, we are in the hospitality business. We want to make people happy. That's what we're here for. But I think it's recognizing that sometimes that's taking a bit of a hardline stance, and doing things that might feel inhospitable.
Yeah. Jirka, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think we also have to think not just about our customers, but our colleagues. Like once I started this practice of asking, can I pour you a taste, or can I pour you a sparkle? You see like one of your wine reps come in and you just think, oh, just pour them some wine. And once I started this practice of asking people for their consent, like I remember someone one time was like, oh, thank God, because they're expected to drink at every place they go to. Like that's part of their job, but every single place is like pouring them wine and they want to make a sale. So they're just like, okay, and going with it. But like just thinking about your colleagues, and even thinking when they come into your restaurant, like I don't want to splash every time I go in to eat a restaurant. I don't want to drink with every meal. And just asking the question, it gives people the opportunity to choose, you know? So let's give that to each other as well.
And Jirka, I think you've even said in some of your events that you host that there is no wine served, because you're really focusing on the business at hand, on how you want to change the industry, and you don't want the wine cloud, I guess, kind of influencing that.
Yeah, and that also is a testament to the people who show up and say, I want to be here and I want to be a part of change and I want to get this knowledge. You know, social justice work, consent work, learning about people's pronouns, like how we treat each other, humanity, like that is as much a part of what it is to be in the wine world as learning the grapes and learning soil and all of that. Like we have to know how to treat each other at the end of the day.
Well, you know, one of the things, you know, that I think that we all do, not just the wine industry, we put people in boxes, as we are literally in boxes right now on Zoom. But I know, Mandy, for you, because, you know, the word of the year, whether we want to use it or not, has been pivot, right? The word of the pandemic. And you realized that your team had talents that you were unaware of, that even though they were excellent in one aspect of their job, when you kind of needed to reconfigure how things worked during the pandemic, you suddenly saw these other things that they could contribute. Do you want to speak on kind of tapping into people's hidden talents that they might not be aware of and that you weren't aware of?
Sure. I think that that was one of the biggest takeaways from this time, was that I think in a sense we had a quite a rigid view of how the roles should be set and what people should do and what they could do. And with the pandemic, we literally were forced to upend that. So we maybe, myself, my manager, learning how to put certain things together in the kitchen when our chef wasn't able to be here. And then someone who had been in the kitchen, we utilized in the front of house. And actually that person is still here contributing in that way. And it really opened up our eyes to realizing how many different talents people had and how people can be cross-utilized, and how it's not useful to just silo people into one way or to one function. And I think that's something I hope we continue to bring forward. If we hire someone in the kitchen and they express an interest in doing something in the front of the house, that we'll continue to be open to cultivating that. And I think that kind of goes along with everything else we're talking about, and how you create a dynamic environment, and an environment in which people can be happy and can be the most satisfied possible coming to work.
Exactly. Now, Annette, you've made a shift that many people have made from, working for a corporation to now you work for yourself. And there are pros and cons. So do you want to maybe touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Working for Costco was the most wonderful time of my life. And when I decided to retire a couple years ago, it was a really big decision. And it was a decision that I needed to be happy with, and one without any regrets. The corporate world, in particular retail, it's hard work and it can be a grind. It was a grind, actually. But I had to make a lot of sacrifices. I worked long hours, weekends, holidays. And, but what it did give me, it gave me really good work ethics and business sense to be successful with the business. That said, I think it was very difficult to figure out what that work-life balance was. I think it's just a way, how do you really integrate your crazy work life with your busy home life? And you have to make decisions on what you will do, what you're going to miss out on, and you have to be super happy with those decisions. I think sometimes it's like when you have two great life events that are happening on the same weekend, you have to choose on which one you're going to attend, because you can't be in two places at one time. So it's about making yourself happy with the choices that you make. But yeah, my life today, transitioning out of a full-time, pretty stressful job to a part-time consulting gig, and working with people that I like and doing things that I like. It's been really, really good. And my life it's pretty good now.
Yeah, the through line through all of your experiences, even though they're different in many ways, is kind of this being intentional and creating happiness, right? That I think we're moving away from this idea that, you work, that you can love your work and you can craft it in a way that brings you joy and fulfillment. When the leadership conference was in person, all the guests were given a postcard and they would write down one goal that they wanted to achieve in the year in the spirit of creating a more diverse and dynamic industry. And then they would write that postcard to themselves, and then the Women in Wine Leadership Symposium team would mail it back to them about 6 months later. So you could say, oh, did I make any progress? Did I make any movement on that goal? So I'd love for each of you to share maybe a goal that you have for either yourself or for the industry. And I encourage our guests to think about this as well, maybe jot it down while you're listening and revisit it in a few months or a year. So let's start with you, Mandy.
Yes, well, I think a part of just being in this discussion and in our talks and preparing for it, I think I've been thinking a lot about our team and our staff, and that they're really the backbone of what we do, and it creates the experience, it creates the environment, it makes everything work. And so when I was thinking about this question, I thought, and I've also been kind of amazed at how many people over the years have left Ardesia, who came to Ardesia not necessarily super wine focused, but left Ardesia and have stayed in the industry. And I think because I didn't come up the quote unquote traditional path, I don't think of us as an incubator, but in fact, I think we are a bit of an incubator, and maybe an incubator of people who don't do things the traditional way and end up in really interesting areas of the industry. Anyway, in short, I think what I want to commit to doing this year is to sit down with each one of our staff and ask them if there is a goal they have for this year, for something they want to achieve in our industry. And I'm talking wine, I'm talking the kitchen, every single person. Take a little bit of time, sit down with them, hear from them, and find out what it is they want to achieve this year and how we can support that. So I'm putting that out there for the world, and I look forward to doing that.
Great. Jirka, what about you?
I think my goal, one of my biggest goals this year, is to continue to support the 280 project, which is a project I work closely with. It's led by a man named Christopher Renfro. He is a Black man based in San Francisco. So the 280 project did their first fellowship last year in partnership with Davis and Steve Mathiasen. And what they do is, the first fellowship was 10 BIPOC LGBTQ AAPI people that got to go through this fellowship learning about viticulture all over Napa and Mendocino and Sonoma. And we're gearing up to announce applications for the 2022 fellowship. But my goal would be to raise $100K for the 280 project so we can keep expanding this effort. This year we'll be able to do 10 fellows and 3 under 18 fellows, so 13 in total. Like, I want to see that number triple every year. Like, I want to see it grow and grow. And, you know, Steve Mathiasen has been a great support, and Davis has been a great support. I want to see more collaboration on that, and growing the landscape of what a winemaker looks like.
Oh.
You know, I think another big goal for me, can I add a second one?
Go for it. Go for it.
I would love to see more collaboration amongst all of these beautiful organizations that have blossomed in the United States. So be that Wine Unify, Batonnage, Roots Fund, Industry Sessions, Dream Big, Darling. I would love to see all these organizations come together and work together, because we all have the same mission. We all have the same goal of diversifying and leveling the playing field. Thank you.
Wonderful. Annette, what about you?
I, like Jirka, have 2 as well.
And Mandy, if you want to come in at the end with the second one, you're welcome to. I want to be fair.
My first one is wellness, wellness in 2022. You know, more exercise, or how about consistent exercise? Let's go with that one. A more balanced diet and more mindful on the consumption. So that's my number 1. And then 2 is the mentorship, continuing that with the programs that I'm involved with. I do agree with Jirka. Is there a way a lot of these programs that are out there, can we come together? Because they are all the same common goal. And then really trying to recruit more people into these organizations to help and support. And so that's what my goals are for 22.
Wonderful. Mandy, do you want to add another goal?
I would just add that as I've learned so much about the organizations that have popped up, like Jirka's Industry Sessions and others, that I would also love to find a way to support one or more of those. So if there are ways that me as a business owner in New York can offer support, I'd love to find a way to do that this year.
So Annette touched on this a bit. I would love to ask you and Jirka as well. You know, what are you doing for your own personal self-care? We've talked a lot about how you're helping your communities and your colleagues. So Jirka, what is it that you do to keep yourself grounded?
Oh, I do a lot. I definitely, therapy is amazing. Like, everyone should go to therapy. The Roots Fund actually offers therapy to all of their scholars. That's incredible, like for free. And I'm not a part of the Roots Fund, but I think that's beautiful that they supply that. Therapy has been incredible, giving myself the tools to understand what triggers me, what maybe I would have used as a trigger to be like, I'm gonna go drink today because, you know, I want to be really real about working on alcohol. Like, it's a slippery slope sometimes, especially when we're going through a never-ending pandemic. So I work out 4 times a week. I eat really nourishing foods. I have my pistachios here. I have my goji berries. Like, I keep things that I can snack on that are going to be nourishing to my body. I'm constantly drinking water, and I keep nourishing people around me. Mm-hmm. I think it's so important to keep nourishing people around you, to have quiet times, to have times where you are a hermit and you don't have to show up to every event, and you see who shows up for you and checks on you. Those are the people who want to nourish your soul. And just having a tab on that. Obviously, this is an industry and we have to have all sorts of relationships, but knowing who is there for you and wants to see you win, and that who you can tap on when you are weak and they can be strong, that is, when you have that it's a never-ending gift. It keeps on giving. Knowing what my intentions are, journaling, CBD, like.
So it's not just one thing. It can take different forms depending on the day.
Whatever,
Man, what about you?
Whatever works for you.
All right, I'm impressed. That's a lot of things. This is probably an area I struggle a great deal with because I'm, obviously balancing running a business and then sort of any free moment I want to give to my son and my family. But much like Annette, I need to prioritize health. And two really concrete things I'm doing. One, I got the Peloton. So I'm, which is extravagant, but at the same time, time is my biggest commodity. So being able to hop on and hop off. And also another sort of indulgence, but I think something really wonderful that I've done is engage with a nutrition coach. Her handles at Feel Good with Erica. And it, in the past may have seemed to me like something frivolous or, how can I spend money and having someone tell me what to do? But I'm learning so much about nutrition, how to take care of myself better. And especially as a, post-maternal person, your needs change, and it's been just incredible. So if anyone has ever thought of dabbling in that, Feel Good with Erica. And just going to take inspiration from the other things that were said too. I'm going to get some goji berries next to my
love it. I love it. I don't know if I've ever tasted a goji berry. Now I have to try one. But we have some great questions from those that have been watching. So I think we should get started on the Q&A. Now, Annette, earlier you mentioned the 6 principles. Someone wanted to know if you could elaborate on those a bit.
They're basically, the 4 P's of merchandising, product, place, promotion, price, but there's also quantity and condition of the products as well. So it's just kind of a principle that as buyers you would follow and just make sure, have we ticked off all those boxes when we're looking at bringing in an item, and will that relate to the consumer?
Wonderful. Also, Annette, this is a question, says, I am a Wine Unify Award recipient. Thank you for your contribution. When you face challenges of your merit, experience, or leadership, not just as a woman, but a woman of color, do you have tools or responses that work for you that enabled your ascension in your career at Costco and now as a business owner?
I think I've probably always just thought of, am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right thing? And, if I took all that out, being a woman, being a person of color, if I'm just doing the right thing and knowing, and I think everybody knows in their hearts of hearts, if they're doing the right thing, if they're saying the right thing, if they're being honest, I think that carries a lot of weight and gets you into the place you want to be. I don't think it has to be so complicated that you overthink anything. You just do the right thing, and you know what that is.
Yep, wonderful. So Mandy, we touched on this a bit. So much of the hospitality industry is built on margins that require people to work long hours and constantly hustle. So maybe a little more about how can businesses remain viable and suddenly learn to treat their employees as people?
That is an excellent question. I think that's what probably almost every single business is struggling with right now, because we are facing skyrocketing prices for ingredients, labor costs have gone up, so the math can just not add up. But I think if we can't go backwards, we can't experience the pandemic. We can't go back to the expectations of the old ways. And so one thing we're undertaking at Ardesia is a top to bottom look at every single number, every single thing that we buy, every single cost, looking at every single recipe, looking at are we probably we'd have a lot to learn from Annette. Are we buying the right things? Are we buying the right quantities? So it's going to take a lot of work, but I think that's one way, because if we can control the controllables, then we can see where that gets us and what we have left to work with. But Yeah, it's hard. It's the central challenge of what we're facing, what all of us are facing.
Yeah. One interesting thing that came out of the pandemic, that food and wine were recognized as essential businesses, right? So how did COVID maybe make you think of your business in a different way? So the word essential being attached to what you do.
Was that for me or
for you, Mandy?
Yeah, I think that early on was something we struggled with a great deal. I questioned whether what we were doing was essential or should be considered essential, and were we safe leaving our house? And there were only a few of us, but still, was this worth the risk? And I think that's been huge, that we realized from our community that we were essential to them. And as a business, we were essential to the people that work within the business. And I think that's just gotten us thinking every day so much more about community. We wouldn't have survived without the community that supported us. And then on the flip side, they came to us over and over again and still talk to us about how important we were in helping them get through that time. And when they were able to maybe get a delivery for a special occasion that they wouldn't have been able to celebrate, how meaningful that was. Or when people could leave their homes and we were doing a little pop-up off our patio and they're able to just breathe and see other people from a distance. So that just gave us so much encouragement to kind of run with that and to continue doing things to cultivate our community inside and outside, our community of our team and those surrounding us and those that were so vital to our survival.
Jirka, so what are your plans for industry sessions moving forward, and how can people help? For those who, corporations, what type of support would you like to see the industry give industry sessions and similar programs?
I'm planning the next session probably end of February, and we're going to be doing them quarterly just because we have some bigger projects that we are partnering on to kind of follow suit with the goal of collaboration this year. I think the biggest support is monetary support. We have a lot of support from the industry when it comes to getting wine, and winemakers are offering us wine all the time. So that's been great, but it's also important for us to be able to ship the wines to students. And I would say that for me right now, I think everyone should start donating to things like the 280 Project and things like Roots Fund. I feel like for me, those are two organizations that I see. All the organizations are doing amazing work, but those are two organizations that are really hitting it hard and are taking their actions to the next level. So I would say if you have the means, throw your money at them, because what's coming down the pipeline through both those organizations is incredible. Yeah, that's what I would add to the pot. I see a lot of people wanting to know more about the 280 Project. You can follow me on Instagram. It's at YIRKITA at Jirkita, or you can just Google me, Jireh, and it'll pop up. Follow me. I'll put up some links for 280 and some other projects that I think are really amazing. I'll throw up some Black and brown and queer winemakers that are coming up on the scene on my story as well. So you can start seeing like the movement that's happening throughout the United States. A lot of young women as well. Like in Vermont, there's this amazing group of non-binary and women that are making hybrid wines. I feel like everybody should know about that. There's so much happening domestically in the United States. But yeah, go to @Jirkita and I'll throw up a bunch of content so you guys can really see what's happening.
Jirka, I have to mention, since you said what brought you to New York was actually your love of hip hop and wanting a career there. Lately, we're seeing this cultural shift where wine and hip hop are kind of hand in hand now. You have shows like Grand Cru, you have instant, influencers who are really melding the two worlds. So it's not really a shock now to see it's been normalized.
It's becoming a part, the cultures are combining. And for me, that makes my heart, I'm like, wow, my two worlds that were so separate that I never thought I could combine are coming together. And I would say stay tuned.
Ah, okay. Are you dropping a mixtape, Jirka? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm dropping something.
I love it. I love it.
I would also say that Mary J. Blige wine is probably the best out of the hip hop and wine collaborations. The Ramato is delicious.
Okay. Love it. So, someone is seeking career advice. And I think, this is a very specific question and I really want to get to it. So I'm going to have Annette answer and then Mandy. So what is your advice for a woman in her mid-40s who is taking on a complete career change, studying for her WSET diploma, and really motivated to make her mark in the wine industry? I know we've touched it on a little, but maybe each of you could give some specific tips for her. So let's start with you, Annette.
Sure. Well, first, congratulations on the career change and good luck to you. Seeking mentorship when you're transitioning. I actually have a nephew who's in his 40s that's doing a career change as well. And so I'm trying to help him as well, different things that he needs to know. So I think it's about mentorship, and Batonage has their level 2 that can actually help you get to that and get some good advice from some different people. You need to be able to figure out how to network. When I think you get with any of these groups, you're going to be able to network, and you need to broaden out who you're going to network with. You need people from across the way so you can learn from so many different people, not just one person or 2 people. Try to get it very broad. And you have to be very curious and ask a lot of questions. What do I need? What should I do? Where can I learn? Who can help me? This is the direction I want to go. So I think you have to have a lot of questions, but then you also need some mentors and some relationships and some networking to get some different answers, different opinions, and then you're going to form your own opinion, and I'm sure you're going to do really well.
Great. Mandy, any advice?
Well, I think that was terrific, everything that Annette said, and I would just tack on to that obviously the wine world is vast. So if you don't already know which area you want to dive deeper, maybe that's a good starting point to pick 3 or 4 areas, whether it's journalism or being on the floor, or sales, like what is it you think you want to do? And then start being really methodical, like get a Google spreadsheet going and find 4 or 5 people in each of those areas that you can talk to. And just, it's actually something I did when I was transitioning into hospitality. I had some of the most random conversations because I was still exploring other areas. So people are really willing to talk. If you say, do you have 15 minutes? You don't need a lot of time to get a vibe about something. But I think asking those questions about what the day-to-day is like and making sure that you don't jump into something that's completely opposed to the kind of work style that you're looking for. And again, like Annette said, the relationships I think are key here, because especially if you are entering the industry quote unquote later, but I don't think there's ever a later, then I think it's all the more important to get in those doors as quickly as possible. I would just add, if this person wants to reach out to me, if I can help in any way or have a conversation, I'd be very open to that. I'm on all the socials. So yeah, just be really methodical, be really precise, keep track, keep notes, and stay really open to what might be there. But I think it's awesome what you're doing, and I'm excited. I hope I learned who you are and where you end up.
Yes, please let us know how that works out. We want to follow up on that. So I know, Jirka, this must be something you touch on in industry sessions, because mentoring can take different forms. So when someone comes to you and says, I need a mentor, what advice do you give? How do they go about that process?
I really try to gauge where people are at on their journey, and then I try to gauge what their goals are. I love having just very clear, concise conversations. What are you looking for? Where are you at? Where's your wine knowledge at? Maybe they don't even know where the wine knowledge is at. We kind of just have that base conversation. And then from there, I immediately start hitting my network up. And I know there's plenty of you that are watching right now that I have texted you and said, hey, do you know anybody in Texas? Do you know anybody in Houston? I have a young woman who, wants to be a sommelier, has no support. Who do we know in Texas? Bing, bing, bing. Let's connect the dots. It's as easy as that. And then throwing a wall of support at them, and whoever resonates and connects is who's going to connect. And that's a beautiful way to just cast seeds and see what grows, to bring it back to agriculture. again. Yeah, I also, for me, in finding mentors, I still have mentors that are in the music and creative world. I have mentors in the wine world. I also have mentors in like the spirits world that I go to if I need advice on anything. And it's been as simple as, I really respect your work. I am coming into this new phase in my career. I would really love to connect with you on some advice. I see that there's a question on how to find a mentor, and it's just as easy as that. If they're open to you, they will say yes. And if they are not, that's not the person that you needed to teach you. So don't take anything personally. People have a lot of things that they're working on. So it might not be the window. So maybe you come back in 6 months and just say, hey, I'd like to touch base again and see if we can connect on XYZ. Don't give up. Exactly. And yeah, we make those connections along the way. You never know. It might be you're sitting at a wine bar and you find someone that is so knowledgeable. You're just like, I want to connect with you, or I want to just come to sit at this wine bar and talk to you about wine because I'm going to get some knowledge. And you start telling them, I'm really interested in XYZ. So now when they see you, they're like, oh, I have XYZ open and I want you to taste it. Let's talk about it. Let's open a book.
Thank you. Well, our time has flown by. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you, Annette, Jirka, Mandy. It's about staying connected, building relationships, speaking up, speaking out, and supporting each other. Thank you for allowing me to moderate this conversation. It was really an honor. And Nicole, I'm going to turn it back to you now.
Thank you, Wanda, Annette, Jirka, and Mandy for such an inspiring and thought-provoking conversation. We're going to take a short break now before our producer panel starts at 2:30. Please leave your Zoom open. We'll have a slideshow on the screen in the meantime. We look forward to seeing you back shortly. Welcome to the second session of Winebow Import's 10th Women in Wine Leadership Symposium, and thank you for joining us. I'm thrilled to now introduce the moderator of our second session, award-winning journalist and Atlanta-based entrepreneur, Cathy Hoya. A two-time graduate of Harvard University, first from the Graduate School of Design and then from the journalism program, Cathy is a regular columnist for Forbes, where she writes primarily about the business and politics of the wine industry. Her writing has also been seen and heard on the BBC, The Atlantic, The Washington Post, and NPR. In 2016, she co-founded Analytics, a company which provides data-driven business intelligence to beverage alcohol companies around the world. She's also the co-creator of content for A Balanced Glass, a community dedicated to wellness in the industry. Thank you so much, Cathy, for leading our discussion today.
Nicole, thank you very much. And let me start by saying congratulations to Winebow on their 10th anniversary of putting on this really amazing symposium for women in wine leadership. And congratulations to you and the entire team. Also, huge shout out to the previous panel. Oh my goodness, it's a very tough act to follow. Wanda, expert communication around moderating, and not only a little bit anxious about it before that panel, but now particularly anxious afterwards. So congratulations to you and to the previous panel for all that you are contributing to the conversation. Let me jump right in to this panel that we are, of the winemakers who are in front of you today. We're specifically talking about partnerships. We're specifically talking about two sets of partners who are making really innovative projects work in wine, in business, and in life. So let me introduce you to the four of them very briefly. Adriana Katina. What I loved about her bio, and you can read the bios in the booklet that is attached to this symposium, but I'm particularly intrigued to read Adriana's bio, where she's a historian of trade, of transatlantic trade, specifically of the Iberian Peninsula, and she spends her time split between London and Argentina, where she co-founded the Enemigo brand with Alejandro, who is our second panelist. I just want to sort of raise up this book. He is the co-author with Laura Catena. It's called Mon Amour, and it is absolutely an homage to the wines of Argentina, and as is El Enemigo. with Adriana. Joining us from Portugal is Sandra Tavares de Silva and her husband and partner, Jorge Serôdio Borges. Sandra, in 2020, was named by Jancis Robinson as one of the most notable women winemakers and the only Portuguese to do so. In 2001, she and her husband, Jorge, founded Wine and Soul that I'm looking forward to hearing more about. Jorge was born into a wine family in the Douro of Portugal. And in 2011, he co-launched MOB, one of 3 winemakers launching that initiative project in the Dow. So let me just very briefly introduce the logistics, which is just to say that we chose the themes for this part of the symposium today in order to allow the panelists this space to talk about their stories around the theme of partnership and working together in wine and as partners in a relationship as well. So also, though, we wanted very much for you, the audience, to have takeaways from this conversation. So our content is oriented around those 2 things, the space to tell the stories, but also to have takeaways for the audience. So jumping right in, please, with Sandra and Jorge. All 4 of you really are creative and successful and intelligent practitioners within the wine business and the wine industry yourselves, and yet you have decided to work together. Jorge, I'd like to hear from you about the decision to go into that partnership with your wife. And Sandra, if you could please weigh in also, and what are some boundaries that you have set with Jorge in order to be successful?
So, good evening to all, and thank you for the invitation to be here. It's a pleasure. You know, we got married in 2001, and Sandra and I, we were young winemakers, you know, from Portugal, that we wanted to discover the wine world, the wine people surrounding about the wines. So we were traveling as much as we could to visit wineries, to taste different wines all over the world. And I think the moment where we decided to start our own company was a night where we were in Bordeaux, in France, tasting with other winemakers, where we were included on a blind tasting, you know, tasting top wines from all over the world. And during that night, we realized that we wanted to be one day with our wine on a tasting like that, because it was a shame for us that any of our Portuguese wines were included on this level of quality. So I think the moment when we tasted a blind red wine from Bordeaux, that after we knew that was Chateau Latour, we decided, and was common reaction for both of us, that this wine was so perfect that's something that we should do in Portugal on the Douro Valley, not a copy of Chateau Latour, but a wine that could show the terroir of the Douro. That was our driven decision at the moment. So we went back home and we started to build the project in a white paper, you know, from scratch. So we were trying to decide where to go to, how to do it, where we get the money to start the project. So, and that was the first moment that took us where we are now with the company 20 years after.
Yes, it has been a very organic thing and very beautiful challenge and beautiful way, because I think it was our dream to produce wine together. We didn't, in the beginning, it was just to produce one wine in order to grow and to learn faster and to understand the markets and so on. And then step by step, we've been growing and building our company. And I think the boundaries, I think it's especially, I think it's so important working together. It's fantastic. Being as we have the same dream, we have the same philosophy, even being very different from each other, but we have the same goal. So, and we work together to achieve that goal and the objectives. But I think it's the main thing. It's we have to respect a lot each other. We have to discuss a lot and to listen a lot to each other in order to be successful, and especially one thing that we always try to do, especially because we have also 3 kids, and we don't want to bring the problems home. We don't want to bring the business home. So we try not to, but even it's funny that sometimes our children want to know what's happening in the winery or what's happening in the vineyards. But I think it's a very natural way, and that we are living our dreams. So it has been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much. What I really appreciate about your responses is that yes, there was an inspiration wine, but you wanted to manifest that wine in Portugal. You wanted to manifest that perfection and that ideal of a wine in Portugal, in your home territory. But also the thread of pragmatism. It's a commercial enterprise as well, and you figure out sort of how it works in a day-to-day life. So definitely, I appreciate both of those aspects, and it actually helps me to segue to the next question for Adriana and Ale, which is around your story, your origin story, especially for El Enemigo. I feel like the thread that Sandra and Jorge were talking about commitment to their land, to their terroir, carries through for you as well in Argentina. Adriana.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to tell our origin story, well, just to begin with, thanks everyone for having us here. This is so exciting. The first talk was just fascinating. There was so much incredible material came through to me. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity to be here today. So how did El Enemigo come into being? We actually got lost. We got terribly lost in London one night after the Decanter Man of the Year Awards, where my dad, Nicolás Catena Zapata, had just been given the award for Decanter Man of the Year. And so we're trying to get back to our hotel, but we get hopelessly lost. And in the course of this, we find out that me and Ale really get along, and that we have a lot in common, and that we are both very interested in working on a new project, and that we have a similar vision of this project. And then I feel like everything sort of fell into place quite smoothly, because Ale had just become a father, and that's very hard. And I was trying to write a PhD in history, and it's not as hard, but it's still, it can have its complicated moments. And I feel like we both felt we were struggling with different, shall we say, routine difficulties, and that we both felt that the enemy was ourselves. And at some point that came out in conversation, the enemy, blah. And then I said, well, why don't we just call it that, El Enemigo? And Ale was actually the only person who said yes without hesitating. Everyone else was like, oh, I don't know, it's so dark. Do you really want to call wine the enemy? But no, but the enemy, we'd explain the whole concept. But for Ale and me, this is the sort of way in which we see eye to eye. Things go quite smoothly because we have a friendship. And this is very important to us. And in that case, it was complete agreement from the start. Yes, El Enemigo. And then we moved on, to creating the concept and the idea. And of course, behind that all was, I think, a similar vision of what we wanted to do with Argentine wine.
Mm-hmm. I should mention, and Ale, forgive me for not saying this at the beginning, that you have been the head winemaker for Catena Zapata since 2007. So that's why you were there in London, I think, maybe, when you and Adriana connected that day. But Adriana, I want to dig a little bit further, and Jorge, invite you to respond to this from your perspective as well. But Adriana, there is on sort of the the theme of darkness, and there was a little bit of resistance, I think maybe just around the name El Enemigo and its darkness. It's kind of overshadowing a little bit, but yet you don't see it that way. There's another side to it. It's dark, and that's how we can see the light, or that's how we know that there's light. And I wonder if you could talk about that within the context, especially of the darkness that we've all been living through these past 2 years through COVID. What has COVID taught you about darkness, and for, specifically for your brand and for your partnership with Alejandro?
Well, for us, I think the darkness comes in the sense that we both see each other as we like being imperfect. We don't seek that kind of perfection in saying humans, and we like this sort of imperfection. And with COVID, I think that while the global experience was really, there was a lot of inequity there. For us as a small company, it did feel like we were going through something together and being stronger for it. I think it gave us all a sense of closeness. There was more intimacy. We were seeing each other at all times. We were trying to fit in things. Children would pop up in Zoom sessions. Constanza, who we work very closely with, had a baby, and so she was breastfeeding. And so it brought us together in a different way. And that was very special. So there was a light to it, I think, in the sense that we worked, so we contemplated this common humanity. We were all going through something together for that one moment. And that meant a lot, I think, in the sense of how we worked together and how we felt that we enjoyed, that how we went through it together, and it made it all the better for it.
I think it's really brave to look at the dark parts, and to not be afraid of that, and to then to also though recognize that there's light as well. So I'd actually like to invite all four of the panelists to address this question. Jorge, will you please go next, and then Sandra?
Sorry?
Yeah. Regards to COVID.
Yeah. We at the company, with COVID, we have a very small company. We work in an office with 6 other people. So we, at the beginning with COVID, everybody was scared about, because no one knew what was going on. So the first 2 weeks were very scared for all of us, and everybody started to work from home. And after these 2 weeks, I think the people were tired to work home, and we took care about all the healthy restrictions, and we were back to the office. And I think we started to work together much more than before. Including we had the meals all together. That was something that didn't happen before. And and before COVID, I didn't knew what Zoom or Teams platform existed. I didn't know that. So after that, with COVID, we all of us, we discovered this new facilities. And I think we have been in touch with people all around the world for tastings, online tastings. And I think that's one of the big advantage of what happens. It was how close we can be with people that are in the other side of the world using this kind of facilities. So I think with COVID we discover
other skills,
other skills that we didn't knew that we had. So
I think that's a super valuable sort of light in the darkness for sure. Sandra, and then Ale, if you can please plan to go next, please.
Yes, I think during COVID it was very stressful time, especially right in the beginning. Nobody knew what was going to happen, so everybody was really stressed and worried about the future. But I think it gave us a lot of strength. So we had to be very strong and to support each other, even in our company or with friends or with family. We try to help as much as we can, and especially I think before we were not so worried because everything was normal. And nowadays, I think even now in our company, we are always supporting the workers that have children. They can bring the children, or if there are problems, if schools are closing, they have to stay home. So I think we are much more comprehensive nowadays, and we have to be much more attentive, with more attention to the others. So I think because the COVID gave us a sense of we are very fragile. Life is very fragile and so important. And also gave us, again, a lot of, we want to live, and when we want to how do you say it, to enjoy every moment we can be together with our friends, with our family, with our kids. There was much more time, for instance, ourselves, we used to travel a lot. It was very uncommon to be together at home, both of us. Normally it was only one and the other was traveling. And nowadays, even our kids sometimes are you okay? Are you both at home all this time? And so it has been great to enjoy them, to see them grow, to help them in the school and everything that we couldn't do it before. And also it gave us another thing that was good. Gave us more time to taste together, because sometimes we didn't have time to taste as much together. Normally we taste by ourselves, and then only on the final blending we were together. And these last years we worked a lot together, especially to make new blends for port wine. This has been very good for us, for our company, that we released very new port wines that we were doing them for 10 and 20 years, and we didn't have the time to blend as we wanted. So I think I think COVID opened a lot our eyes to, and especially to give we have to be very, how do you say, grateful to the time.
I think that's an aspect of winemaking that isn't talked about very much, is how much time now that winemakers who work together because of COVID actually have time to spend together on making the wine. Thank you for bringing that up, Sandra. Alejandro, what is your perspective on what you've learned from COVID about the darkness and the light coming out of it?
Oh, hi. The first is hi, and thank you for everything that. And Sandra and Jorge, I drink Portugal wine in this moment. I don't like too much for you, maybe, but for me it's very good. That's it's the harvest time. That is very interesting time for me. That's the first time is very difficult for us, and understand it's the harvest time in COVID time, and what is the future for harvest. But in the end, sorry, I have Adriana here. My English is very bad, but okay, that she understands exactly what is my ideas. There was to be more flexibility during COVID. There was more time for the family and talk about life and the future and the person. That for me is very interesting time. There was to understand the idea for the life. You have many time for understand exactly what is the future for your business and family, and for my country too. Where I understand the idea for the life that is very important for me. In the end, we have time for understand what is there in the same boat all together, and having a vision of love to all the people that surround us. That is very important for me, and understand all together, see the future, no individual. And it's for me the big time that, well, I work in all days, but for here and the winery, I have around 1 hour, and this time only 20 minutes. It's crazy. And I have many time for my family. For many years, it's 200 days of the year I travel for the work. And no, all year in my house. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have a SOMM and everything, but for me, it's no. You black for the problem, but for me, it's very interesting. And in the same time, we had many Zoom for Adriana and talk about the future and the life and not only business.
Mm.
So that's understand the world and yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When
it's bigger time, but I like that. I like that.
I think all of us, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Alejandro, but I think all of us, we realize that we don't want to go back to the crazy life we had before COVID.
Yeah, sure, sure.
So I think that's a very positive thing that happens with COVID, was how we learn how bad our life was before that, you know. So
and see and understand in the end what is the real position in the world for us. Making wine, yes. That is important, yes, but no is the purpose. Maybe we have a little more purpose for the life. What is we change the world? That maybe I don't know, but a little war for husband, for neighbor, and everything.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you all for your answers on that. A common theme for sure is that we've come to know each other comprehensively. Sandra, I think you used that word. We have a comprehensive sort of understanding of each other's lives, and it's true that does sort of help us reprioritize and sort of reorient our ways of what we spend our time doing. Yeah. Let me shift gears a little bit. Adriana, back to you. Please tell me about how within your partnership you think about playing to your strengths. We hear a lot about within business, within even relationships. It's oftentimes easier when each person involved gets to play to their strengths. How have you figured out how to do that with you and your brand?
Well, for us, I think it came quite naturally because I was a historian, I was a lecturer beforehand. So there's certain things that I'll be more keen to do. And, you know, Ale is a winemaker, he's in Mendoza. We're 12,000 miles away from each other many months of the year. So that makes for a different kind of partnership. And so we were sort of used to talking on the phone well before COVID, really. When you think about it, Ale, we've been doing that for years, not on Zoom, but yes, over the phone. And so for us, you know, things are quite divided. You know, I deal with a lot of the marketing, we're doing a lot of the PR, the ideas, the concepts, the labels, and Ale is very involved in the winemaking. And so for us, there is less overlap maybe than in other partnerships. In what we do, and so it sort of comes quite naturally. We both let each other do work quite freely.
Right, and actually a theme that's come up in our calls in advance of this session today was perfectionism. And Sandra, I wonder if you can talk about that. You've described both you and your husband as perfectionists. So how does that work in terms of playing to your strengths and finding structure for the business?
Yes, I think, yes, being both of us are winemakers, and both of us, when we decided to create our own company, Wine and Soul, we really since the beginning, we are always into details. But it's funny because even we are very similar in many, many things, but we have different approaches to different areas. So while it's winemaking, we have a very similar way to work. And I think the best and the key thing for being successful working in a team, especially two winemakers, it's to decide what we really want to achieve. So before doing any wines, we really talk a lot and we decide what we want to achieve, which style we want, and then we start building the wine in terms of which terroir, which grapes, how we will vinify, and so on. And then it's easy, and that's how it's very easy to work together as a winemaker and to achieve the style of the wine that we want to. Mm-hmm. But then I think it's being very similar in the winemaking, but we have different strengths. So even on tasting or on the business. So for instance, Jorge is very pragmatic and very how do you say it? He's very good on the financial and management, on the business, and I like more on the areas of the design or the labels or PR or marketing or so on. So I think and commercial part, so talking with our distributors and buyers. So I think we really complement each other. So I think it's fantastic to work in a team that we respect each other a lot, and we talk a lot and we discuss a lot, but we know what we are good at, you know. So and I think it's a way that we always work since the beginning.
Right. So I have to ask though, and Alejandro, I'm going to start with you on this next question. I have to ask, and I completely understand, and clearly you all work together very well, but what happens when there's conflict? What happens when you disagree? Then what? How do you work it out?
She's a little intense. In everything that is very interesting is together. Yeah, but it's very intense time. But open mind all time. We need this in the life and we need this in the world. We need new ideas for everything. Flexibility, this, about leadership, mentorship, understand the teacher for the many people. You put in the river, I don't know, with this, Adriana is going with the flow, staying in the course. You put
stay in the course.
Go in the water. I don't have rules for me. In this moment, I don't have rules. The COVID time and my life, knowing COVID time, all time, I know I don't have rules. Just passion over table. That for me is very important. Put all in the table.
Alejandro, I don't know about everybody else, but that sounds to me like just a recipe for conflict. I don't know. Yes. I don't know.
Can I butt in here to say, I think that one thing, I'm not sure if it's coming out as much, but Ale and I, we sort of share, that's what he's trying to say. We share this way of working maybe obsessively and in a sort of dreamy, romantic way and in a very like free, and we sort of both do the same thing. So we don't clash there because we can, I think we understand the way the other is, thinking maybe in a very obsessive, perfectionist way about something. And so we, there's that desire to listen and the capacity to understand. I think it's when something's recognizable and familiar, the other's madness, but you're like, oh, but I know that madness, so it doesn't scare me. And so that's a little bit of, I think, what Ale was trying to get at.
No, but it's very important to understand for everything, the rules is right for the people.
Yeah.
The real rules, but
the right people are doing the right things for them.
Yeah, exactly. All like that.
Right. Great. Thank you.
No,
Jorge and Sandra, if I could circle back to you and ask you about both of you in our calls that have mentioned the role models that women, your mothers and your grandmothers in particular, have played in your lives. I'd like to ask you to talk some more about that. Jorge, maybe if you could go first, and Sandra as well.
Can I just say something about the previous question?
Yes,
and just compare a little bit between Adriana and both of us, because you have a big advantage that you live far, a big distance from one to the other. So imagine both of us, having all these discussions and you know, this turbulence about and bringing everything to back home. So
we try not to.
So it was impossible. In our case, it has to be different. Has to be different. Of course, we have our conflicts, we have our tension, and we try. That's a rule for us. We try to not bring home the problems that we have during the work day. So that's very important. But you know.
Sometimes it's hard.
Sometimes it's not easy, but we try to.
I think the distance question is really an important one. Adriana, you in London, Alejandro, you in Argentina, and Jorge and Sandra 6 inches away from each other, literally. Literally. Will you please tell us about your mothers and your grandmothers and the role that they have played in your lives, both personally and professionally? Jorge and Sandra, if you can go ahead, please.
I remember my grandmother, you know. First of all, my grandfather, he was also a winemaker. Yeah. And I remember him when he was blending the wines, and he was in a moment that he has 2 different wines, you know, 2 different blends, very, very similar each other, but was, you know, like 5% of one was different to the other. So he has his doubts about which blend he was to, he should choose. And he always asked the opinion of my grandmother. So my grandmother, she was always very, quiet on her corner, but she was very smart, and she was very clever to taste. During tasting, she was really very, very, very clever on tasting. So she always helped my grandfather which blend he should take. And I think what Sandra is doing on a tasting that we do together is, I remember my grandmother, because Sandra, she pays attention for small details that sometimes I miss them. And that's the most important thing that yes, I see on Sandra's skills during tasting, is that she takes me to attention to small things that I don't realize. And once I think about my mother or my grandmother, honestly, I think what Sandra did, moving her life from the big city of Lisbon to the Douro Valley. You know, the Douro today was not the Douro 20 years ago. So it was a remote area somewhere in the countryside of Portugal. And she's coming from a life being a model, very well-known model in Portugal. And she moved to the Douro because she believed that she could be much more happy in living in the vineyards. So honestly, with all respect I have from my mother and my grandmother, I think the reference is Sandra, how brave she was to move and to believe on the project for our life.
Yeah, thank you, Jorge. Thank you. Sandra, is there anything you would like to add about the women who have inspired you in your life?
Yes, I think my mother, of course, and my grandmother were really my biggest inspirations for life, because they have both had my grandmother had a huge and a very strong personality. She had a very tough life, and she struggled a lot. And it was, even on those days, she couldn't study because the girls couldn't study. She had to just learn French and play piano and to be a beautiful wife. So she always taught us, to me and my sisters and my cousins, because it's funny that in my family, we are almost all girls. And she always said to us, you have to study, you have to be independent, you have to keep focused in your future. And she was always so happy to see her grandchildren to be successful in different areas. And she always said, you have to be independent, you have to be. So I think she was always very good, pushing all of us to believe on us, and nothing would be that we could do anything, even being winemaker. I was the first being winemaker in my family. So and to choose our ways, you know, to find our ways. And my mother as well. So my mother, she's Swiss, and she also had a big difficult times after the war and so on. And because Switzerland, it was a hard country also after that. And so there were 5 children, and only the boys could have just to continue the studies. And so also my mother said, you have to do it. Me and my sister, so she was always pushing us to make master degrees and really to do what we loved. So they never pressed us to study to be a doctor or to be an economist. So they were always pushing us, you do what you follow your dreams. And that's what we so I think both of them are truly a great inspiration for what I am now.
And obviously it's having impacts even today. Thank you. Adriana, if I could jump a little bit and kind of extend this thread and invite you to talk about the foundation that you and Alejandro are building. Can you? Oh,
yeah, absolutely. So it was really inspired by, Ali has some very important female figures in his life. And my mother always says I have many mothers, because I've had some incredible female mentors in my life as a student, as a graduate student. And of course, there's my sister, who is a powerhouse, Laura Catena, and she will, you know, have to get a plane down with her 3 kids on the plane and then come and have a meeting with a winery. You know, she's a doctor too, and, you know, be absolutely superhuman. And it's this idea that women supporting women, and just how important that mentorship and that support is. And with that in mind, I think for Ale and myself, it was important to we wanted to not only to start a foundation that could collaborate with different female projects in Mendoza, in the region, working specifically with female farmers, but also to study the situation, which is something the way that I would want to approach our work. And so we began this foundation that has an observatory. And so we'll begin funding PhD students to study different aspects of the current situation as it is experienced by female farmers in Mendoza, and then to seek out different partners to collaborate with. Ali is already doing a lot of outreach work. He's been doing this for decades. And so this is just a way to channel a lot of the work that he's already been doing, some work that I've been doing, and to put this all together into a foundation that is dedicated solely to female farmers in the region and to finding ways to improve their situation. There's an exodus today of female farmers, so of farmers more generally. And so we want to find out what's going on and what we can do to change and make life conditions better.
Yeah. Adriana, what is the foundation called?
Sorry, we need in Argentina.
Ale, please.
Yeah, no, only we need in Argentina, need more possibilities for the future and present. That's in the end, we have the same idea for Adriana. The women is the real change in viticulture in the future and today. And we need the focus in this. We need necessary, what is the real necessary front for the future in Argentina? Adriana, I remember this project 5 years ago. She talk about this, I say, okay, come in. That's after the COVID time. For me, it's very important point. For my grandmother, I remember sometime, one time for my grandmother, I can't forget December 24, 1 week before harvest time for tomato. And that night we had a bigger, strong storm, and everything was lost. And you know, my grandfather see the tomatoes fell to the floor for many time. My grandmother wait, and after with minutes, she picked him up and say, tomorrow will be another day. And for me, this is very important for me, the life, the inspiration for this idea for Adriana. Thank you, Adriana, for this.
Yeah.
And thank you, Cathy.
Adriana, what is the foundation called?
Mother Courage, Madre Coraje. Takes its title, Madre Coraje, Fundación Madre, it takes its title from the Brecht play of the same name. Ale, thank you. That was very beautiful. I didn't know that story.
No, it's strong. I remember exactly my grandfather in the soil, put the hands in the soil, and
wow.
No, and strong. My grandmother is okay. Come in. It's the dinner. Come in. That is very more important. It's the family here and everything.
Right. Great. Jorge, let me ask you please as well. You have spoken about the inequality that you've seen in viticulture in Portugal. Can you talk about what, as a company, you're doing to address that?
Yeah, so it's very common in the Douro Valley that a woman and a man doing the same job in the vineyards, they have different salaries. So the man, he receives higher salary because he's just a man. So in our company, we don't do that. We have the same salary for both. So the salary is according not to the gender, but according to the job and the responsibility they are doing. And we had a couple that 3 years ago, they started working for us, so husband and the wife, and they were doing exactly the same job. So they started to receive the same salary for both. And I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months after they started working for us, the man came to us and I don't want to work here because you do not respect us. You do not respect me. He was not worried about the woman, his wife, but he was worried about himself. So you do not respect me. So I will quit with working with you and we go working for another. And I asked him, but why? What happened? No, because my salary is the same salary as my wife. And I said, of course, you're doing the same job. No, it's not possible that, because the man should receive more than the wife. So, and what we are doing is exactly the opposite. So it's the salary is according to the job, to the responsibility, and not to the gender. And in our company, we have maybe more women working for us than men.
Jorge, how long ago did that conversation happen? Was that recently?
Yeah, recently, 3 years ago, I think. 3 years ago.
And they left. The person left, or how did you resolve it?
No, they gone. They gone because I tried to explain them that there was no other way to work, you know.
But now it's changing. Now it's people know that in our company it's like this, so it's changing.
Right.
They accept it.
Okay, great. I love that story, and thank you for actually giving us an opportunity to end sort of this part of the conversation on that story. We've only got about 10 minutes left, and I would really love to do a little bit of a final kind of flash round where I would like to give you a topic, And each of you spend just a very brief amount of time talking about that topic in relation to your partnership and your work. And after we do that, we'll take questions that have been submitted through the chat box. So the topic is emotion. How does emotion impact you in your partnership, both professionally and personally? Adriana, can I start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, emotion. So Ali and I both, my father, of course, I know him very well, but Ali also knows my father very well. So he might know this too, I wonder. But for my father, when one is in an argument or in a discussion, the moment you get emotional is the moment you lose. So it works both ways. If he gets emotional, I say to him, you got emotional. And so, if it's a work conversation, of course. And so that's when he loses or I lose the argument. And so I think that what the word emotion brings to my mind is really to make an effort to not, to contain those emotions that shut communication, like fear and anger, and to always, strive to keep communication lines open. And so in a sense, emotion, if any emotion, for it to be calm and tranquility, but ideally not to put that much emotion.
Interesting.
Other than the passion in the winemaking.
Interesting. Alejandro,
that is all emotional time. That's all time. And we talk, Adriana, all time. That is very, very, grandfather, the father for Adriana, talk about business sometime. That I'm winemaker for Catena Zapata in the last 20 years. And Laura Catena too, talk about that is big problem for me. That's all time for me is all is emotional. And in the vineyard, it's everything for me. And the winery, all time, it's very difficult in my life. My wife to say all time, please come in, please, a little more in the world. That's the wine life is a real style for me, the life. It's my 100% time. My children's and my life is around vineyard and wine. And Adriana is part of my life, and Laura and Familia Catena too. And it's very difficult for my business too. It's crazy, but all time I need to feel the terroir. And for me, terroir is more people, it's more emotion and sensation. And this is my life.
It's unavoidable, isn't it, Ale?
Ale is an absolute romantic.
Yeah. Sandra and Jorge, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Sandra, what does emotion, how does that play out in your life, both professionally and personally?
For me, it's very hard because I'm a really emotional people. I'm a person. For me, emotion is everything. I'm very passionate.
So you are like Alejandro.
I'm very difficult to cut a little because I'm very emotional to all the vineyards. While I'm passionate about the vines and the dreams that we want to achieve, and so I think for me it's the sensibility that we have on all these vineyards and wines that we are producing, or the roots that we create in the vineyards. So I think for me it's very hard to avoid the emotions, because I think all what we achieved, it was with a lot of emotion, a lot of passion, and also a lot of effort. So even on our winery, with our family, with our team. So I think I pass a lot of that to them. While I think Jorge has a slightly different, way.
Yeah, I think definitely to enjoy life, we need to feel the emotion. Otherwise, you don't enjoy the life. But regarding the business, I think that's where we complement each other very well, because I'm much more focused and pragmatic on decisions. So I learn with the time that we are together how to add the emotion to the decision as well. So I think it's at the end of the day, it's a mix of both, more pragmatic, more emotional. But I agree with Alejandro and disagree with him, because I think the emotion, we need it, but it's not everything for me. But but I respect the Sandra, where she's much more emotional than myself.
It's interesting, the idea of adding emotion to a decision. It's and recognizing that is something that has evolved for you over time.
Yes.
So thank you for that. And we've only got a couple of minutes left. One of the questions that has come in from Victoria Capelli, she actually wants to get back to the question of tension and conflict. And Sandra, she's asking specifically for you, is there a specific topic that you most disagree about? And how do you resolve it as business partners and as life partners? What is what's the friction that you are that you stay up at night arguing over?
I think some decisions, or especially, I think it's funny that when we are tasting or blending, sometimes we disagree, but it's funny that we have to argue and to respect the comments and the ideas of each other. And I think we find our way, and we have to explain why we prefer this blend than the other. And I think it's more the conflict we have, it's mostly on the blending or this type of decisions.
I tell you a story. We had at the beginning of our project, we had the moment where to decide which brand are we going to call to our wine, because the wine was 2001 was the first vintage. The wine was already made, was on the barrels, and we didn't have any decision which name, which brand the wine should have. So we tried to register many different brands, but all of them were occupied, were registered from other companies. So we were completely desperate, asking for the help for a brand. And one day, at the time, we didn't have any kids, so we had a dog, and the dog, his name was called Pintas. Pintas means spots, in English. So Sandra said, "I have an idea for the dog." I took the decision for the brand. So the brand, yes, that's it. So the brand, she said to me, "So our wine will be called Pintas." And I said, "Pintas, are you crazy? No one will take us serious with that brand." So, but she insisted. She convinced me she argued with me. So, and today our wine is called Pintas. So, when we have conflicts each other, I give up.
I like it. Great. Thank you very much for that pulling back the curtain a little bit on that. Let me ask just one final question. Adriana, you spend quite a lot of your time also in the academic world, in the academic space, and I'm curious about balance. How does balance come through for you, both personally and professionally, when you've got so much going on, when you are excelling in different fields? How do you pull it off?
Oh, I wonder. I don't think I do. I think I go the Confucian way, and I say, if I don't manage it today, I'll try again tomorrow. And that, I have my small systems. I try and organize my day into sort of very short compartment sessions, 45 minutes on each topic. And, I make a lot of separation in my day to day of what I'm working on, what I'm writing, etc. But I think that, finding the work-life balance is an aspiration. I hope to manage one day.
I need more time in this world, please.
Yeah.
I need more time.
What can I say?
Yeah. Alejandro, other than needing more hours in the day, any suggestions for work-life balance from you?
No. But for me, it's perfect. No. Only sometime in the first label, I remember for 1 year, talk about this, but no. I have big problem you know, all time my life is a little more intellectual time, and I need more, you know, I know have problem for some problem for Adriana. Adriana is a little more easy on me, and all time put the balance in this business. I like that.
It's all the emotion, Alejandro, on your skin.
Yeah, all time,
clearly,
you know,
clearly.
I say I don't remember conflict. But I live on the top of the palm tree. There is nothing.
All right. Well, on that note, I see that Nicole has popped up on the screen, which is the cue that we are at about time. Nicole, would you like to wrap up?
Thank you so much, Cathy, Adriana, Alejandro, Sandra, and George for such an enlightening discussion. On behalf of all of us at Winebow Imports, I'd just like to express my gratitude for everyone who joined today, and to Two in Communications, our partners in producing this event. Please look out for a survey that we'll be sending in an email. We'd really greatly appreciate your feedback to help shape future symposiums. Thanks again, everyone, and take care.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you so much. A pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Ferreira 2009.